Welcome to Conversations on the Coast, San Francisco's premier author interview program. We're going to be talking today to Andrea Lee, who joins us all the way from Italy. She's here to talk about her newest novel called Lost Hearts in Italy, and it's published by Random House. Thank you for coming all this way.
Oh, I'm great. I'm glad to be here. It's beautiful weather, and it's a lot better than it is in Italy.
It is.
Yeah, it was pouring rain when I left.
There you go. We have wonderful weather here right now. You know, when I started reading this book, I read it with the feeling that I probably wouldn't do it on the program. But Lost Hearts in Italy seemed to me a straightforward story of Mira and Nick, young marrieds in Rome, and a fellow by the name of Zenon, who's described as an older Italian billionaire, and an ensuing intense, richly detailed affair. And the problem with being reticent about doing the interview was that I couldn't stop reading. I couldn't stop reading because of the quality of the writing, the sense of place that you convey, the pace of the pace of the storytelling. And it dawned on me that you've really earned Philip Roth's encomium. He says, Andrea Lee is the real thing. There is nothing more to say.
Well, I'm incredibly flattered, of course, by that and also by your comments. So.
Well, we'll find more to say. Was he talking about one particular book or all of your writing when he said
He
that?
was talking particularly about Interesting Women, which was a collection of short stories, most of which had been published before in the New Yorker.
In the New Yorker? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that was my last book before then.
Okay.
For this one.
And this is, you haven't done a novel in a lot of years, I read somewhere.
Yeah, I haven't. I did.
What have you been doing? Hanging out, just writing short stories?
Eating pasta, of course. Pasta and gnocchi and all those things. No, I have been writing doing a lot of journalism stuff for the New Yorker and writing short stories.
One of the things that intrigues me about the book is the way, and I can only think of putting it this way, that you play with time. You've time frames from 2004 to 1985 to 1981 to 1962 to 2005 to 1986 and back and forth and back and forth. That I think performs a function in the book, doesn't it?
Yeah, but did it confuse you?
No, it did at first. But what's the function that?
The function is to give, the idea I had in doing this book was to try to look at a classic situation, a triangle, love triangle, from a lot of different perspectives. And it's something I'd never done before, but something I've always wanted to do because I live in Italy, but I'm an American. I'm always looking from different perspectives, two different perspectives. So I wanted to look from a lot of different angles at something that happened. And so changes in time change the way we look at things. And so that's just another way of looking at one situation in a lot of different ways. Because sometimes things that seem tragic look a little funny when many years have gone past, or at least less tragic.
Yeah, and the other thing that permits you to do is to bring in a different point of view without having to clear your throat, so to speak, and say, this is where it comes from and why and so on. When you start talking about the time of it, that's fine. That clears it for the reader, that this is going to come from another place.
Well, that's really encouraging. You know, this book was an experiment. I had never done anything remotely this complicated before, and it was hard to write. It was hard to put together. So,
well, one of the other things you throw in is what I call the, quote, Greek chorus. We have snippets from certain people at the end of a chapter or a section. There's a deckhand, there's a literary wife, somebody called the assistant director. And the assistant director, I think, is one that we can share because it's very short. Yeah. This is an assistant director at a film shoot or
I think it's a television film shoot. Yes.
Television film shoot. The assistant director talks. She's been a hit among the cast and crew, talking about Mira, a pretty young journalist with a lot more on the ball than most of the magazine morons the publicist brings around. Fluent in Italian, pleasantly ironic in the questions she asks, wandering through the formal gardens and the trailers and the frescoed halls with her little tape recorder, jotting down notes in the back of an old copy of Crime and Punishment. Now, that's great. I mean, and that tells us something about Mira, and I don't want to say where we are in the book, but it tells us something about her that we haven't heard before. How do people perceive her in terms of her being a professional writer?
Yeah.
And without saying she went here and she did this and that, here you have, what it's all about as far as she's concerned as a professional.
Yeah, it's part of the impressionistic style I was I was experimenting with really in this book, and I wasn't quite sure that it worked, but I'm really happy to hear that you
I think it worked wonderfully well.
I'm
It really
pleased.
did. Yeah, no. And again, it kind of brings something to a conclusion without, saying, here's the end. Lost Hearts in Italy is a book, in my opinion, without a conventional hero. But again, in my opinion, it's full of memorable characters. And we're going to meet one of them at least, and maybe more, when we come back.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at JimFosterCoc and email JimFosterCoc@gmail.com.
Lost Hearts in Italy, a novel. That's the title, Lost Hearts in Italy. The author with us, Andrea Lee. The publisher is Random House. And Washington Post had Washington Post Book World had something to say about one of your previous books. It says, Lee takes us wherever she is, conveying a feeling of place and atmosphere that is the mark of real talent. And that's one of the general things that I got out of reading Lost Hearts in Italy is a wonderful sense of place, a wonderful feel for Italy, which you've obviously fallen in love with. Can I call you an expat?
I think, unfortunately, you have to call me an expat because I've been over there now for over 15 years, and I'm married to an Italian, so it's kind of like without a cure at this point. And,
you're really stuck there now.
Yeah, I'm really stuck.
You can never come back.
I really don't know if I could come back. Back in the same way.
But in that sense, you are really like Myra and Nick.
Yeah.
And you can, and there is a great sensitivity that you have for that situation, coming to a new place, trying to learn the language, trying to accept the culture and enjoy it, and that's a very important part of the book. Now, getting to characters, one of my favorite, although surely not the most admirable character in the book, is Zenon. Okay, he's an incredibly rich international toy tycoon who even turned heads when he was small. There's something about Zenon that has impressed people, you write, since he was in short pants. Perhaps it is that stony face that hides a rapacious peasant mind and a cold ambition that belies his poorly dressed, awkward figure. He is already the first in his family to achieve a university degree, capped by a thesis that he paid a studious old maid to write, knowing even then that it was all bull. That's our boy.
Yeah, that's our boy
Zenon. Now, and again, because of this juxtaposition, the way you play with time, right across from where that's written on the facing page, there is this. It isn't desire that drives him. No, it is the sense of place of himself in the town where he was born and that he has never really left. A town where Zenon is still apart from everything because that is his pathology, to be a penniless tourist in life, eternally deprived, unable to have anything for himself in any real sense. Though for a long time he has been as rich as a sultan in the Emilio Salgari novels he read as a boy, a billionaire who always feels like a beggar.
Yeah,
what a terrible place to be.
Yeah, that's his particular problem. But at the same time, he has one saving grace, and that is his sense of place and his sense of home. And that's what I wanted to contrast in the book. One of the things I wanted to contrast, that he is rooted in this little town that he's never really left. And then there are the two Americans who are uprooted, who kind of lose their country because both of them end up at the end of the story years later without really one particular place that feels like home. But he's always there. So he does have one saving grace.
It's obvious to say a man that rich has power as a business person, international business person, but he also has a different kind of power. He has the power, I would say, to make Mira turn herself into what she calls two people. After seeing him for about 6 months, Mira starts to spend a lot of time telling herself that a person can be two people. She takes dawn runs up the Villa Borghese and repeats it to herself like a mantra. This is life. This is what people do. You can handle it. This is what people do. This is what women do in books, like so many others. She has discovered how fatally easy it is to divide a life, two hearts, two souls in one body, a little like being pregnant.
Yeah. No, it's all part of the theme in the book about looking at things from two perspectives, which is a terrible thing in a certain way, and also a kind of a wonderful thing because it gives you insight. It's about being foreign because you're apart. You're divided in two. Yeah.
But the other thing is that you never lose sight when you're writing about Mira of what she's leaving behind. Because on the very next page, again, and I'm terribly sorry, this sounds like a thesis, but this is, where these things occur.
I'm glad you're quoting it, not me.
It says, Nick, freshly showered with his hair in wet spikes, dancing her and Maddie, their daughter, in the big Victorian bathroom. The bathroom is steamed up. The gorgeous little girl screeching with glee, flushed with her bath, her head swathed in a towel. Mira herself bare to the waist, jiggling. Shrieks, giggles, the smell of diapers, shampoo, freshly scrubbed skin, gilt mist of evening lamps. The pure essence of family passion. What a marvelous, marvelous phrase.
But I think that's the contrast in most books about love affairs, about adulterous love affairs, that family love, and then there's, of course, passionate, illicit love, and it's always the biggest contrast. So you can see that in Anna Karenina. You can see that, where Anna feels passion for her son and then for her lover. Yeah. So it's always something that's fascinated me.
Wow. Lost Hearts in Italy moves at a headlong pace, but the plot leaves some questions in its wake, and I want to look at one of them when we come back.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at JimFosterCoc and email JimFosterCoc@gmail.com.
This is Jim Foster. It is Conversations on the Coast. Lost Hearts in Italy is the book. It's a novel by Andrea Lee, published by Random House. And we spent a lot of time here, probably too much time, focusing on Zenon.
The bad guy.
My male non-hero.
Well, he's like Satan in Paradise Lost. He kind of takes over,
Yes, he does.
Yeah,
there's so many facets to him that you get out that he's fascinating.
Yeah, no, I found that myself when I was writing, and I felt that it was much more fun to write about him.
And I spoke to your publicist about that. She had the same opinion. This was also her favorite character.
No, I think there's a book there somewhere. The bad guys are always much more interesting. No?
There's another wonderful character here, Mira. Tell us about Mira. We haven't said enough about her.
Well, Mira is a young woman. I mean, she's the I guess the center of the book, if you could call it that, because she's the young woman who does the sinning, the person who has the love affair and breaks up the marriage, and she is a bright young woman, a writer, a journalist, travel writer, and part African American, and privileged. I guess she's smart and strong, and she's fallible like everyone else. I think most of the book talks about her confusion. I mean, she's attracted to this man against her will because she's really in love with her husband. So it's kind of a...
But I think you still get across, or I got, as far as I'm concerned, despite all of her confusion and, quote, weakness, unquote, there's a strength to her. There's a strength to her.
Well, I think all three characters are strong. That's the interesting thing. I think, as I say at the beginning, I think they all have this kind of, it's a stubborn attachment to life. I mean, none of them are going to fade away because there was a tragedy or a betrayal. So they all end up alive, and very emphatically so at the end, stubbornly alive. And so she's definitely strong.
And I don't want to leave the impression that, all of the talk about the affair and so on is kind of like dark. There is a moment in it when which is wonderfully light and happy, and I think ebullient. It's when he decides to introduce her to real clothes, Italian clothes. And he gets this huge suitcase and goes to all the right shops in Rome, and then he brings it to her. They start taking things out.
Yeah, and he dresses her and teaches her the names of all the designers, which she is, as a kind of an American quote unquote intellectual, has studiously ignored.
Versace,
Exactly.
Fendi, Missoni, Montana.
Montana. This is in the 80s. Claude
I'm
Montana.
reading from the book here.
That was back in the 80s. Claude Montana is a big designer. So he dresses her, and that's kind of one of the first steps in her real downfall, because she can't resist these clothes and the glamour.
How
and
could
transforming
she?
her. No woman could.
I mean, the way that he brought them to her, it's just wonderful. There's a long passage in the book which raises a question which I don't think you answer, and probably maybe doesn't have an answer. You write, the greatest part of his attraction to her is that he is damaging her, and that she seems worth damaging. She is his escape, his cloak of invisibility, and he still loves to astonish her. What are you getting at there? That disturbed me.
He loves to men like Zenin or Zenin, as it's pronounced.
Oh my God, I've been mispronouncing.
No, it could be Zenin or it could be Zenin.
I hope he doesn't come after me.
No, he's not going to come after you.
Okay.
At least not today.
Zenin.
The thing about a man like that is that that rich and that powerful, is that he could have any woman he wants to. He could buy any woman he wants to. But he gets bored easily. He can buy anything he wants to. But since he has very little inside of him, he can't feel interest very easily. So he's fascinated. He's found this girl who isn't like the others. He could have the more beautiful women, maybe the models or actresses, and he continues to be attracted to her.
The ones you continually describe as blonde Russians or Russian blondes.
I think that's a more contemporary thing, because the Russian blondes didn't really start arriving until the 90s in Italy. Now it's full.
Now it's full of Russian
gorgeous
blondes.
Russian blondes.
This book is up to date.
I couldn't resist putting them in.
After one of their trysts in a far-off place, he says, or he goes off, feeling strong and excited by his power to snatch a woman out of one dimension and place her into another, by the fact that, though she tries to conceal it, she is amazed.
Yeah.
And that's the tension between the two of them. Myra tries to act, kind of cool about this.
Yeah, yeah.
I am who I am. I'm a really bright, beautiful African-American woman, and who are you?
Exactly. But at the same time, she is impressed.
She is impressed by him and by all he can do.
And all that he represents, which is all of Europe and Europe and the foreign country of money, which is...
The foreign country of what?
Of money. It says that
money.
at the beginning of the book at some point.
Oh.
So it's all a play on different kinds of foreign.
Trust me, this is an absolutely fascinating book. This is one that you should run out and get a couple of copies so you can share it with your neighbors. It is called Lost Hearts in Italy. The author is Andrea Lee, and this has been Conversations on the Coast, and I'm Jim Foster.
Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at Jim Foster COC and email jimfostercoc@gmail.com.